Welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name is Joe. Today we're going to be doing a first look at the game Western Front Ace, The Great War in the Air, 1916 to 1918. This is a game designed by Gregory Smith and Ian Cooper, and it's basically built on Gregory Smith's kind of narrative solitaire game system that has been in a pretty sizable number of games now. The system has grown quite a lot. Silent Victory, The Hunters and the Hunted, the submarine games, Interceptor Ace, Night Fighter Ace, American Tank Ace. So this is part of the Ace series, which is published by Compass Games, which is kind of the publisher that Gregory Smith has worked with the most of late. So this is the latest in that Ace line, and this one, as you have already heard, this one covers the Great War in the Air, 1916 to 1918, so the last 3 years of the war. So we're going to take a look at this guy here. This is a nice thick box, a big 3-inch box here. As you can see, we've got some planes here on the side. This is an Austrian plane, so this is kind of a new thing. I've played other, World War I aerial games, and they typically don't really deal with anything except like the French, British, Germans, and Americans. Literally Western Front, which is what this says, but it's also Western Front and Italian Front, and not the only party really not in this would be Russia, so the Eastern Front. So as you can see, there's a lot of info here on the back. You do have your aircraft chart. We'll see that in a moment. And some pictures of the counters, some cards for the various pilots. So here in the components, we've got 2 counter sheets of 9/16" unit counters, 336 total, 30 aircraft display mats, 8.5 by 11", 12 player aid cards. That's a lot. Typically, there are a lot of player aid cards in Greg Smith's games. 1 2-seater target mat, 2 patrol maps for the Western and Italian fronts, 12 ace pilot cards that are double-sided, 1 deck of 60 combat cards, and we'll see that as well here in a moment. 6 sequence of play cards, rule booklet, 1 sortie log sheet pad, 2-sided, 2 6-sided, 1 10-sided, and 1 20-sided die. Designer Gregory M. Smith and Ian Cooper. Project director was John Krantz. Lead artist Ian Wedge. Supporting artist Nadir El Farah and Bruce Yerian. And box cover designed by Ian Wedge and Bruce Yerian. So we have a complexity of medium. The time scale is 1 game is 1 sortie. Map is abstract. Unit scale is an individual aircraft. It's a solitaire game. So therefore the suitability for solitaire would be high. Average time to play, 15 minutes per sortie, and the recommended age is 14 and up. So let's take a look. I'll crack the shrink wrap off of here, and we'll take a look at what's inside the box. Okay, so let's open up the box here and see what's inside. Okay, well, we've got some baggies. And we have our dice, as it said on the front. We've got 2 D6, a D20, and a D10. We have some cards. These are our combat cards. So there's a deck of combat cards here, which you use when you are, guess what, in combat. And it gives you various things for attack and defense. You can see on defense you have the wingman who can potentially help you. In this instance, he's busy and provides no help. Maneuver of a barrel roll to avoid 2 hits. So I'm not going to go too deep into the rules. That's kind of typically the way I work these first look videos. I will talk about some things, that I know of hearing about the game, etc., etc. I did pre-order this, so I'm pretty excited to get it and get a chance to play it. So I'm going to try to slot this in somewhere this month here in July. As you would know if you watched my July channel update. So here you can see we have Werner Voss here. He was a German ace. He had 48 victories. He, as you can see by his date of death, he died on September 23rd, 1917. Obviously, he was killed during the war. Survivability of pilots was very, very short during this war. You're talking about really early aircraft technology. The aircraft were not sturdy at all. They were typically made of wood and canvas in many cases, and as you would expect, that is not sturdy when it is put under machine gun fire. It also had a tendency to burst into flames. They had all kinds of problems with machine guns, with propellers, all kinds of nasty, nasty problems. If the enemy didn't kill you, your own aircraft might. So here we have just some clarifications about, things that are in the box here. Obviously, the 24 ace pilot cards are on 12 double-sided cards. Like, I could rip into this, but you can see the difference here in the side here. So these would be the ace cards because they have the stripe here, and then these would be just additional combat cards, I believe. Stuff about the counter sheets and the display mats, and then a couple clarifications for gameplay. All right, so now we've got our rules of play. So typical kind of formatting here with your numbered system, and we got 35 pages apparently. Nice introduction, little QR code if you wanted to jump onto the Compass Games website. Then we get right into how to play the game, the equipment, all the different aircraft. There are a lot of aircraft, and what's neat in this is, say the U.S., for example, they didn't really build their own aircraft. So you can see that the United States, when it entered World War I, it's flying the Newport 17, which is a French plane. So they have the 17, the 24 bis, which is up here as well, the 28, which apparently the French did not fly, and then a couple of Spads, and the Sopwith Camel, which was a British plane, which was also flown by the Belgians, as you can see, as well. And I think it's really neat that you have the British, the French, the Belgians, the Americans, and the Italians. And then on the Central Power side, you have not only Germany, but also Austria-Hungary. And as you can see here, they also have, they flew some German planes, but they also flew some of their own stuff as well. Two-seaters, there were two-seater planes, as you might guess, though many were single-seaters. Status chart, playing pieces, how to read the markers. Here's our ace card for Eddie Rickenbacker, famous American ace, later founded Eastern Airlines. And combat card. So you have examples for damage by firepower, defensive action, rear gunner, defensive fire. So in a two-seater, you would have a rear gunner and the card number. So all these cards have numbers. And that's this card right here. Same card. So this is card number 1. I'm guessing card number 60 or so is probably on top. Maybe not, because I'm pretty sure we have 56 here. So there you have it. There are random events. There's all kinds of stuff in here. So game setup, base assignment. You have a bunch of bases here depending on who you're playing as. You can see if you play as Austria-Hungary, you're on the Italian front with Trento and Trieste. Vicenza for the Italians. Also Udine, which I'm probably pronouncing incorrectly. Apologies. Don't even get me started on the French names, because I'll guarantee you I will butcher those horribly. Then we have our aircraft display mat and how you win, sequence of play, all kinds of stuff. So I've heard some complaining about the rule book. I literally have just opened the box, as you probably saw, and I have not read the rules yet. So I can't make any comments about how clear the rules are, but it seems pretty thorough. And I think that a familiarity with some of the other games that Gregory Smith has made, like say Interceptor Ace or Night Fighter Ace, which are also, of course, aircraft games, probably a lot of similarities. Also a lot of differences, because the aircraft were much more primitive, for one thing. And but again, you have pilot status. This is kind of a standard for the series. If you play American Tank Ace, you have your commander card, basically, where you have the same thing here with the uniform. Same thing in Night Fighter Ace, Interceptor Ace, the America Bomber, and I forget what the other flip side of that is. His kind of ahistorical, what if the Germans had, conquered Europe and attacked the United States directly, kind of thing. But they all share this same kind of thing where you track your status for your pilot on an 8.5 by 11 card, basically like a player aid, and you put counters on there to mark certain things, and you get decorations and everything. So it's kind of neat. And then we have all this stuff here, reassignment. You can get newer aircraft, optional rules for multiplayer, cooperative play, competitive play. It's talking about the ace cards, fatigue effects, variable pilot quality. These are all the optional rules, obviously. So optional random generator charts. You can generate pilot names, squadron assignments, airfield locations, victory locations, all kinds of stuff here. You can play campaigns. We have some designer notes here. He talks about how he was kind of not necessarily coerced, but kind of convinced by John Kranz to think about doing a sequel when he completed Night Fighter Ace. And he did Interceptor Ace, and then, Ian Cooper did Raiders of the Deep. He talks about that right here, which is the World War I version of the Hunters. Ian Cooper is more of a World War I guy, I guess. So, they could put their expertise, join forces, and make things better. Here we have a look at the various aircraft, things about the different aces, because there's Eddie Rickenbacker. And on the back, we do have a rules index, which is always handy. I really appreciate this, because if I want to look something up, it's really easy. If I want to see what the expert skill, it's rule 8.1, and it's on page 21. So that's good to have. Here's our log sheets. Two-sided, as was mentioned on the cover. Western Front sortie log. And it is two-sided, and the sides are different. Because this is the 1918 side, and this side has 1916 and 17. So you start in September of 16, and you can go up to the end of the war, basically, which would be November of 18. You go through October of 18. So there's that. And we get our mounted map. This would be the Western Front, obviously. Belgium, Germany, France, Luxembourg. And then we have the Italian front. So here you have Trento, Isonzo. Interesting. I'm tempted to play that front just because it's so different. You don't typically get to play. In terms of World War I games, a lot of them focus obviously on either the Western Front or the Eastern Front. And not a lot of them focus on the Italian front, which was fairly static, but it was still, as was the Western Front, if you think about it, at least, except for the initial part of the war and the very end of the war, the Western Front was very static. The Eastern Front was probably the most interesting because there was more maneuvering out there, especially early on. Here's our counter sheets, various aircraft. They seem like they punch out pretty easy. I'm flexing them in and out here with my fingers, but they are still in the shrink wrap. So we do it, yeah, they're coming out real easy here. Easier than I would like, maybe. Here you can see ranks. So we have some German ranks here. Hauptmann, which is a captain, if you're not familiar. Oberleutnant, Lieutenant, basically lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain, and major. There. French, British, Belgian, Austria-Hungary. We have U.S. and Royal Navy, I guess, RNAS, Royal Naval Air Service. So you have two versions of the British, Royal Flying Corps and the Royal Navy Air Service. And then we got all of these fantastic aircraft cards and player aids. This is a lot of stuff. So let's just flip through these here real quick. Look at the size of this stack. This is insane, man. Wow. All right, so we have the Newport 23 backed by the Newport 21. As you can see, available at start. So you do have your basing here, endurance, types of missions, damage, wingman, orientation. So this would be obviously orientation during combat, because you do have, in air-to-air combat, obviously orientation is important. You can be head-on, you can be tailing, you can be advantaged or disadvantaged. There's several different ways to look at that. We have the SPAD, two varieties, the 13 and the 7. And we have the Newport 27. These are French. You can tell by the tail, right? All right. And we have a Sopwith Camel and the Newport 17. Here's our pilot status for Austria-Hungary. So they have the kind of the period uniform, things for the rank and the various medals that a pilot might win. And then skills. This is all very, very much in the vein of the other games that Gregory Smith has done, where you can, you get skills, you gain points for experience and prestige, and then you can use that to purchase things. You have experience points, you have a wingman that you can work with, etc. And then you have the wingman can have some. This is for wingman tracking, I believe. And then the Germans are on the other side. And then here we have France on one side, and probably, I'm guessing, the British on the other. No, the Belgians. The Belgians on the other side. Okay. Some of the many charts. Okay, so as is usual in these games, you'll have a number up here that will identify the card that you look at, or the chart that you look at. And then within here, you look at various things. So like the B7 landing chart, right? So you find your number. So B4, this has everything, right? We have B5, B7, B8, 6, 9, and 10. And then, so they have a parachute chart, which is only applicable apparently to German pilots from July to October 1918. Nobody else had parachutes, which was probably a bad idea. Then we have our fighter damage chart, etc. Then on here we have the C charts. C1, 2, 3, plus a wingman chart and good luck charms. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Lucky rabbit's foot for an American. Du musst Schwein haben. Flight school training, spare time activities. These guys look like they're having a good time. And we have some more aircraft here, some more SPADs. See, you get various countries and things, I guess. And then this looks like Italian. Yep. Now we have Allied Airfield Location Generator. So this is the thing where you would roll to kind of dynamically get an airfield, as opposed to selecting one. And based on which nation you are, British. See, I guess because Belgium is kind of small, of course, and a big chunk of their country was occupied by the Germans for most of the war anyway. So they probably have a fairly limited set of airfields they could operate off of. Whereas the British would have more, the French would obviously have the most, and then the USA is in kind of the same boat as Belgium, only in the case that they're just in France and they just get a handful of potential bases. The Italian front, and then on the back we have squadron assignment, same kind of thing, where you roll for what squadron you are, and it gives you aircraft as well. This is all pretty interesting. There's a lot more to this than in some of the other games, let's just put it that way. And we have our various squadrons again for the Allies. That was the Central Powers. And on the back of this, we have squadron assignment for Central Powers as well. Okay. Then we have our S charts. So these would be names. We have German first names, German surnames. Then you have Austro-Hungarian pilot name chart. Victory location generator for the Western and Italian fronts, distance and direction. And we have the Allied name charts. We have Belgians and Italians on this side, and the British, the Americans, and the French on this side. Yeah, given name, surname. Well, the Germans have a little bit more of a variety, it looks like. Some more Spads and Newports. Here's a Sopwith triplane. Sopwith 1.5 strutter. Newport 23. Bristol Fighter F2B. That's an interesting looking one. Somewhat late in the war. Obviously, it's a two-seater. You have a rear gunner here. And what do we have here? Miscellaneous die rolls. Encounters, traps, AA versus balloon busting, disengagement, aircraft lost to battle, damage. Okay, and then here's the two-seater mat. So you have different two-seaters on here. And we have encounter charts on two sides based on the timing. So you'd roll here first based on where you are, and then you'd roll in here for the encounters, I guess. And you have two-seater encounters as well. What do we have here? Missions. Mission assignment charts, again by year. Central Powers and Allies. On this side, we have starting orientation. So when you bump into the enemy, you roll and you find out who's advantaged or disadvantaged, who's coming out of the sun maybe, or if it's just a head-on, you're coming right at each other. Attack deck results, Italian front two-seaters, an encounter chart for the Italian front, and then more, the Sopwith Pup, more aircraft. We got the Camel on the back. And we got the BE-12, Sopwith Snipe, and Dolphin. And we have the Spad 7, Newport 17, some Germans, the Albatross, D1 and D2, Halberstadt D2, Fokker D3, Fokker D8, and D7. Hansa Brandenburg D1. Aviatik D1. These, I believe, are Austrian. Yeah, that cross is a little different than the German cross. The Phoenix D1. Henriot HD1. That's a Belgian. These are Belgian planes here. Newport. And then we have here Royal Naval Air Service and the regular RFC, Royal Flying Corps. Then we have Italy and the Americans. And then we have more planes. There are a lot. As you can see, there is a lot to this. There is a lot of content in here, as we would say, if we were talking about, say, like a computer game or something. A lot of content. Airco FE8. Just the fact that you can play with, what is it, four or five different allied powers and two central powers. So that's 7 nations, tons of aircraft. There's a lot of game in this box, as you can see by all these cards. So obviously at some point, and I don't know when, I will be doing a playthrough video for this game. And when I do, I will try to give you guys a good impression of what the game is like. And I hope to do it sometime soon, like in a week maybe, something like that. That would be my target. Whether that's a realistic goal, I do not know. Life happens, as they say. But I will do my best to crank out something on here, because I know that a lot of the guys who subscribe to the channel, some are into these type of games, some are not, but I think it's interesting, and I think that the guys even the guys that are kind of on the fence would probably still like to see what it's about and see how it plays. So that will do it. Thank you for watching, as always. I do appreciate that. And until next time, I'm just going to sign off now. I won't do much spiel about, all that stuff where you click things and, subscribe to stuff, all that stuff that I usually ask you about. I'll just pass on that. So until next time, I'm Joe. This has been Hexed Encountered. And as always, happy gaming.